Alright, getting started today with Black Magic Gator. So this is one of the new mini crate models. Really awesome, characterful model. And we're going to get started on the skin. So for that, I'm going to break out the airbrush, some of the white ink. We're going to do some value sketching with the airbrush on the skin, and then come back with the airbrush and start working on some of the other larger areas after. Alright, loaded up some bloodless skin, thinned it down 50-50 with the Vallejo thinner. Hopefully not breaking my model. It's got that spear again. God, everything's so hot. And I might ask why I chose bloodless skin. It's the first thing that I found that was a bright color in the box. So, if you got something similar, go for it. So, focusing a little bit on his snout here, and the tops of these fingers, and letting the airbrush do its job. Build up slowly. We're going to start out with some contrast just to lay in some base color. Might try some of the express paints. Depends on if I'm allowed to use them or not. Yeah, I got permission. So, rough airbrush sketching. Not doing anything fancy yet. Just kind of volumetric, all around light. And we can always go back and add shadow and light. Create interest in both directions. I'm just laying a basis for color right now. I have an illustration that I'm working from one of the role-playing modules that has a gator in it. Really colorful. Make sure I get his thumb in those hard to reach places. And then into this face here where his arm's in the way. It'll be pretty dark in there anyway. I want to show some of that detail. And then laying a contrast over a dark color. Still want to make sure you got some brightness in most areas, not just black. Some sort of tone. We're going to go find some greens to play with. And some of the different lines. You're going to be doing a lot of mixing and just moving that contrast around on the model fairly quickly. Focusing on different elements because he's segmented up. We'll finish with the tail, start with the inside of the legs here. There's a lot of nice texture for contrast to pick up color. Alright, the greens we're going to be playing with are snake green. I think it's all the greens from the line. Troll green. I haven't had a chance to play with them. Clay green. Lizard green. And then orc skin. So, we got two of the lighter colors here in our Turbo Dork palette. Start with the lightest, the more yellowy one. I'll just add that to some areas where we want some brightness. And then as we transition, we can grab a little bit of that darker green. If you like wet blending, you can kind of blend your colors together. So what I did is I loaded up my brush, added some pigment, wipe off my brush, and just agitate that line in between those two colors. So now we're getting a nice little color shift there. Now we have these other colors, got like a blue-green there as well. Let's go ahead and finish out the top of the mouth, top of the head here. We're of course going to go back and do a decent amount of brush work on this guy. Get a little bit of that darker green. Add it in here. Again, just establishing a baseline of color. Getting some visual interest in there. We got some mid-tone green, some yellowy green. And then underneath this chin here, let's grab some of this, see what we're working with on the palette. And then same thing. You want to work quickly if you're doing this. Add a little bit darker green on the belly here. Again, wipe off your brush and get some agitation going. Using just a synthetic brush. I don't think you can see like some of its belly scales through here, so we'll hit those. Generally like lighter color for gators with belly scales. We're gonna let that dry. Probably come back, hit with another coat. Let's see how the leg looks. Let's get that knee. These bright points, transition it down a little bit. Wipe my brush. And sort of mix the paint on the model. So now we got that nice change of tone. Not worried about the color kind of building up in the cracks. We can add some shadow. So I got kind of a dull green, a little bit more darker saturated, and then this bluey green here. The blue green's pretty nice, but I like teal, so of course I'd like that color. Add that into my shadow over here with this leg. Do the same thing here on this knee. Just slather, work that in. Grab our other color. So we got 3 colors going there. Dry my brush off and mix them all together right there. Quick little contrast, wet blend to get some interest going on our skin. Alright, so while those express colors are drying, I'm going to take some black and white and paint the inside of the mouth here. I want to add some brightness to the tongue so we can see that nice flash of color inside his danger hole there. We'll probably do that off camera because you're not going to see it anyway. Alright, once the inside of our mouth is dry with that grayscale, so I did the roof of the mouth, the tongue, and then the palate, the bottom of the mouth there. We're going to take some Doomfire Magenta and a smaller brush, if I can find one. Here we go. Well, pointier brush, how about that? One of the Monument Hobbies bomb wigs. I'm going to paint the entire inside of the mouth with this, and then we're going to use a slightly darker red to kind of punch the shadow. So I'm just getting it in there where I can. Not worrying about the teeth, we're going to have to repaint those, of course. I'm just trying to keep it off the face. I'm trying to go quickly so I don't end up with tide marks or layer lines, whatever you wish to call them. Alright, so while those express colors are drying, I'm going to take some black and white and paint the inside of the mouth here. I want to add some brightness to the tongue so we can see that nice flash of color inside his danger hole there. We'll probably do that off camera because you're not going to see it anyway. Alright, so while that mouth is drying, getting that nice red in there, magenta, going back on the leg and punching our contrast even more. So for that, taking a mixture of trilobite green, those little weird critters. Where is the name? It's up there. Lime green from Vallejo. So the trilobite acts as our glazer or our blender mid-tone, and I'm actually letting that kind of settle into the cracks of the scales here. So it will do that because it has a higher propensity to flow, being a glaze paint. So I'm letting that kind of take the role of toning the in-between on the scales. Now again, because it does have that higher flow, it's going to maintain our shadow while it does that and while it dries. And you see how it's helping us segment the scales a little bit. And then we're taking a mixture of that green and the lime green for coverage. And we're starting to highlight, so we're doing our like a volumetric cylindrical highlight, kind of a frontal light source on this guy. He's kind of dark, coming out of the shadows. And so what I'm going to do is sketch in this color, and then I'll blend it with the trilobite, with the bottom layers. I'll probably make these knees a little red, a little worn, irritated. So we can take our glazer, come in here, blend these colors out. And then I go back with a solid highlight of the lime green. I need to let that dry. Alright, so here we have this mixture down here, which is about a 50-50 value. Well, not value, we're about 60-70% value up toward the lime from the trilobite. You can see the highlights here a little more intense. That's the straight lime green, so that's kind of down the center of that thigh. But we blended out these scales just a little bit more. And then when we move to this straight lime green, go in, train my bristle a little bit. I'm going to start by hitting these edges and then focus on these highlights toward the center of this column. And then we'll need to go back and blend them. So again, going back to that mixture. Kind of hitting the edge there, just to get rid of that brush stroke. Just to blend it up. So you see here, you can see the brush strokes a little bit more clearly. And then here we blended it out. Now you can repeat that process as many times as you want to get it as smooth as you want. Alright, we got all the base color locked in for the skin here. Any sort of shades are going to be done with a little bit of the magenta, just to show some of that skin breaking through, red around the mouth, fingertips, toes, knees, like we talked about. And then we have these scales running down the tail. I'm going to take some of this extra dark green, Verde Extra, oh, I don't know what that is, extra dark green and German yellow, RLM, and blend those up to create some, just to kind of smooth out, because any kind of speed paint, contrast, express paint, those things like always leave like a little bit of texture that you want to clean up. So we're going to do that with these guys. So just coming in, you know, this is a little bit darker, a little more desaturated, but more natural. We're going to add the unnatural stuff later. I'll come in here and outline these scales, and then use this desaturated yellow to come in and highlight some. So give us that hardened scale look, right? It's a little extreme of a step up, so we're going to dial that back and blend it in. That looks like crap right now. And it should. Blend it a little bit. Might go over these scales just completely, just to get rid of that texture. Or find another green. Let's see if I can find a different green. Alright, Gnarls green. That's the green. So, good old P3 paints coming in. I know, it's like brand number 19 as far as paints that we're using for this. So, what I'm doing is I'm leaving the base color in, the cracks, crevices, and around, and I'm just sort of going in and establishing where the highlight tones are going to be. Now the textures between these paints when they dry is very different. The Gnarls Green kind of has a satin to it, and the Express paints are super matte. So you're seeing a little bit of shine show up on the camera where I'm applying the Gnarls Green, and it's not as prevalent in person. So I'm going to continue to do a base layer of that, and I'm going to experiment a little bit with the highlight. Alright, next step for these tail scales, taking some of that Gnarls Green and the yellow, German yellow, that's yellow, and then mixing a little bit of that in, and we're going for a little bit of texture here, so getting some scaly vibes going. So brush strokes kind of pulling toward the end of the tail here.
Yes, we do need to.
Alright, mixing in another step of that yellow and concentrating really tiny highlights. Stop moving camera. Alright. Really tiny highlights. Still following kind of the inside of that texture that we created. And making sure that our highlights are broadest right in here where we have that brighter highlight. The main curve of the tail comes around. It's still small, tiny, textured highlights. And then we're going to take that all the way down the tail. Alright, this is as far as I'm going with the tail for now. Bringing a little bit of that nice fleshiness into Mr. Croc's knees with some of the Doomfire Magenta and the Merlin's Magic Medium. I'm cruddy this morning. Living in Alabama is fun. So I'm just adding a tiny bit of the contrast paint because we don't need that much. And then some of the medium. Thin it down. You can see here there's some pretty thin stuff on the board, which is reactivating off this palette, which is kind of nice, you know. So I like to have paints not just be completely dry. So same knee over here, just glazing in. Need to wipe my brush off. Remember, with glazes you don't want paint pooling. So wipe off on my hand and just pull toward the center point. See how my brush stroke comes in? That gives you that liveliness. We're going to do the same thing like along the gum line. We're going to do some other stuff as far as tans and that to the body tone. Probably want to address like his belly plates next, moving forward. That way we get kind of a basis of like what should be in here, which I think I'm gonna start with a tan because it'll be easier to paint that and then get back in here on all these objects. I went ahead and like kind of blacked out some of the airbrush in areas that aren't going to be used, so on the coat, getting those fixed up. Oh, now let's get like fingers and toes and stuff where the claws come out. So kind of using the intersection of the toenail with the actual skin as a way to... Man, you stupid camera. And I'm just really loosely putting stuff in there. Glazes you can be, yeah, you can be a little more haphazard with them. They're so light that it's easy. You can do some nostril here too. You know, anywhere you think there'd be kind of like flesh tone or irritation. No, I'm not gonna say anything about what he's doing on his knees, but probably praying to a dark god of some kind or a voodoo god. But you hear voodoo's, you know, it's supposed to be pretty It's like good. It's mostly medicine stuff, right? So, hidden fingers, things like that. And then we'll go back and we'll look at belly plates and what we want to do. Alright, so I've gone in, went up the base of the neck here, added some, dots. Crocodiles are pretty speckly. They can get, actually, or alligators. I keep saying crocodile. But they can get actually pretty tan up in there. I look at realistic crocs. I would look at the privateer crocs. Try to do a mixture of each one. Their snoots get a little bit abrased from rooting around and eating stuff. So, lighten that area up, and then went back and added our magenta glazes in there. Strengthen the glazes around the feet and fingers and that. And got these the belly scales all the way down the tail. And definitely, if you're painting this model, like if you're gonna do bright on the inside, any color on the inside, like get that in there first, because all these little details, bangles, bongles, whatever they may be, will get in the way, and you'll need to clean them up. It's easier to go back and paint those after. So now we're going to take some Seraphim Sepia and just add a little bit of naturalization back to that scale area. So just taking right out of that pot, making sure my brush load isn't like crazy or anything, and then coming in. And yeah, that's what I want to see. A little bit of brown tone in there, and pushing it around, making sure that it's not heavy, so that I'll dry off my brush a little bit. I want it to pool, but I want it to pool where I want it to pool, which is hard to do with washes sometimes. So I'm kind of touching, dabbing, pushing, manipulating that paint when I get it locked in where I want it. I stop, and I feel like this tone here way better. Adds that warmth back into the living gator man. Alligator, alligator, alligator. Not the other animal. Yeah, I pulled too much out there, and I want to just add some back. It's kind of it's a deep pocket, so it's gonna grab that wash. I want to make sure that it's not. There we go. So a mixture of like reloading, taking it off the brush, manipulating the brush load a lot. Sharing them. Showing those belly scales, the muscles. Works out at Venice Swamp instead of Venice Beach. There we go, naturalizing that a lot more, and we're gonna go back and work on this highlight a little bit. I'm gonna bring it up to this dead flesh. It's pretty bright. And this is, it's pretty good texture. You guys' copies of the model are probably going to be a little bit cleaner since this is a 3D print. You can see a little bit of the artifacting back in here from the supports. Which guys like this with like all these feathers, I was lucky to get these feathers because, whoa, buddy. Alright, we're going to let that dry for a minute. We'll go back in the mouth, do some stiff. Alright, I got some dead flesh here, which is kind of the green equivalent to khaki. That will be our highlight, so we're still keeping it in that green range. I'm going to take a few mixtures here, just to keep it like the base inner color more green. That's kind of where I want to start, and this is where I want to head, right? So I want to start with a base here and then move to this, and then we can decide whether or not we want to put shadows in. And of course, I might change my mind. I changed my mind earlier on this, right? I went, I don't like that. And that's okay to do. You should do that. Like, that should be a part of your process. You know, try something and make mistakes. If somebody's, you know, presenting a video to you and it has no mistakes in it, you just cut those out. And, you know, I've had big ones that are just kind of like a waste of somebody's time. So I understand that, where it's like you make a mistake and it's like, oh my god, I went 15 minutes deep into this and somebody's going to watch this and I'm just going to redo the whole process. But if I'm just shifting a color somewhere, then you know, it's a minute to show you guys that I'm human. I mean, how else would I sell my soul if I wasn't? Right? Alright, I got some of that Sigvald burgundy and added it over here. You can see the got kind of that purpley red. And I'm going to put some of this cuttlefish medium in there. Just to, you know, add a little bit of darkness to the magenta. Alright, unload my brush a little bit. Don't need it that sopping. And I'm trying to miss the tongue and just get like back of the throat, right? And since I thinned it, it's going to blend itself. I can see like a little area toward the front I want to get. And see, now I can see kind of a little bit of a difference between the plate of the mouth and the tongue. And I'm using the teeth as like a little bit of a bumper. See, I'm going to highlight the tongue just a little bit more. And I'm getting beside the tongue down in here. Sitting here, I got my stance super far apart. Locked in. Look like I'm ready for a karate tournament. I'm going to thin this down a little bit more. Unload my brush, and like I want to glaze this area just a little bit. Right there on the top of the, in between where the teeth are missing. So make it look like there's some teeth that kind of used to be there. Cool. Now I gotta let that dry. So I got two places that we're waiting on drying. Let's paint that skull on his face. And we'll start with some chocolate brown. This is just to you know, bring the khaki down a little bit for our base color. Shake it. So you're starting to get a nice working palette of colors. And this is for my demon. Not a golden demon. My magenta and teal demon. This is obviously not gold. Alright. Taking a little of that chocolate. I mean, if I have a color that's next to me that's easier to access, I will grab it and just mix a color. I was like, where's my beastie brown? I can't find it. Whatever. Let's grab some chocolate. Plus, you know, chocolate's one of those things that's like, make you feel good. So we're just doing a base coat on this. Alright, went in, and I took a little bit of black, added some medium, cuttlefish medium, mixed it down. Where's my, I have to push my palette forward. And then just darkened up our base color, and just added some shadow along where the objects come in. Went ahead and painted the skull. I did some sanity blocking in of a few other colors that are going to be similar. Probably not like exactly the same. We're going to want to do different tones of bone. The sepia is dry, but it is glossy AF. So I'm going to take some lamium. Let's see, was it Archer? Lamium. Yeah. Well, I don't know. And I'm just going to make sure that we knock that gloss out. So we're going to have to wait for that to dry as well. 2 dry steps. But I'm gonna do the little glowy eyes in the skull and the witch doctor. This doctor. Black Magic Gator. But I just want to make sure that this stuff gets matte. I'm just going to hit the whole tail. Why not? Get in there. Matte out. Because we had some inconsistencies in like paint texture from using different brands. Because I don't want to use just one brand. You can't make me. Cool. Now let's take some white here. I'm going to do a little pokey in the eyeballs. Slip my hand, blunt my brush. Just get it all in there. Just kind of push my brush to the back and then do a few loop-de-loops. Let's get those little nostrils too. Gonna be shooting fire out of that skull. Something. Well, I mean, my should it be fire? I think it should be red, because like in the concepts and stuff for some of the other guys, it's like a yellowy red, and it'll work well with the skin. Gotta make sure your magic is a nice complementary color to your skin tone, right? Woo! That eyeball back there is going to be hard to get. Alright, kind of got it in there. Kind of got white everywhere. So I'm going to take the time while that's drying. Let's finish out this tongue. Already got white. Already got a little bit of that same color here. Yes, you can mix acrylics and contrasts. Amazing, I know. Never thought to do that before you watched any of my videos. Gonna pink up his tongue a little bit. See it in there. I can see, man, I can see every brushstroke on that tongue. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of this to that. It's kind of hard to see the mix because we got a white palette. We're adding white to something that's naturally translucent, transparent. Go in there and blend it a little bit. Give him a little bit of a bright tip to his tongue. Just to, he looks more like he's going, wah. Making a little baby gator noise. That mat seems to be drying, working in that area. Did I miss this whole area? Yeah, I did. So I gotta go back and do that. Alright, for these glowing eyes, let's go ahead and start with the Cassandora yellow. It's over there. So building from light to dark. Right? Go in there, go get it in there, and then take a brush and go pull it out. Makes that noise. Brush makes that noise if you zoom in on it really far. And you can see we got that nice yellow tint. We warmed up our white. We're going to do the same thing to this eyeball over here. Come back and that way we'll have a nice bright center. And then again, go for this. Yeah, like the arm and the head were a separate piece. Like, I could have been smart about this. But I had to do like a little bit of gap filling around the arm, so I'd hate to paint something up and then gap fill it. I hate doing that. I absolutely hate it because I will inevitably screw something up. So I'd rather like torture myself with trying to paint stuff that's like hard to get to and like mess something up I spend an hour on. Alright, now we're going to take some of this Magridraff flame. And more using it like a paint than a contrast. This has got a nice color to it. And then I'm not going to dip the brush down into the eye. I'm going to kind of just draw a circle around it. Same with the nose. I want to leave a little bit poking through there. It's just, since it's a contrast, it's going to blend nicely. Don't you go down in there. And I'm gonna do the same with his eyebrows. And then lastly, we'll go to Blood Angel's contrast. This one's lid falls off. Paint pots. Nah, I bitched enough about paint pots. I don't want to bitch anymore. So again, kind of painting around. Letting it blend itself out. Getting that heat. Using a really crappy synthetic brush. Also be like a good contrast for his fingernails here. So able to see him a little bit more. There we go. I blend that out a little bit more off camera where I can actually see what I'm doing. And again, do the same thing for his eye. Alright, gone in and done a lot of work to this little skull that's very hard to see. So taking the same steps that we used in the eyeballs, going white, reduced down with some medium, just so it'll flow in the crack. Washing over that with the... Wash that and put the cap down all the way, the Cassandorian yellow, and the Magmadroth flame. Leaving the red out for this segment because I wanted the blend to end pretty quickly. Neutral brown for the skull, and then a yellowy brown for the claws. So the claws have some of this green dead flesh in it with the khaki mixed, and then worked up to white. Worked up to a higher value than the skull, so you have difference in color, tone, and value for those areas so that they don't get linked into each other. So decided to go kind of bright for the claws on the gator. So this is that color here again, khaki, the dead flesh, for the base color, and then adding white to brighten it up. So I'm going to go in and base coat all of his claws and kind of go over the process of how I painted all of them on the skull hand. And of course, being a little bit better about my control. Let's go ahead and paint the teeth too. We're going to change up the teeth a little bit by using some washes as well. Just we want to show that, you know, gator teeth get kind of dirty. Alright, so after you get his fingernails base coated, add a little bit of white so you can see the value shift here, and then I've already done it here. Nice smooth layers, bringing it toward the cuticle where the fingers start. I think my brain shorts out when I'm trying to talk and paint at the same time. And put stuff in the right spot so that you guys can see it. And then we just keep adding white. And I need like a little bit more yellow in there. Green yellow. Let's do one toe. Adding like a little bit of texture when I do it. And pulling down like the main ridge of the claw when I do it. And add white again. I'm pretty bright with these guys. It's like aquatic animals. Their claws don't seem to get as built up with dirt. Just kind of taking that into consideration with doing these claws. And for the teeth, we're going to start with Reichland Flesh Shade. Same base coat. Just giving it a little bit of that redness. where it touches the gum line. Maybe give him a gold tooth later. We'll see. I do want to build up a little bit. There we go. Especially inside the mouth. Go in behind all these teeth. Fun places to get to. Alright, highlighted the teeth up the same way. Just got that little bit of extra darkness from the wash. And I like how that looks. So I think I'm going to go back and add it. But I'm just going to be a little bit more careful of how I add it. And, you know, break the rule of not using your good brushes with your washes. I want to be more... See, I'm just loading like the very tip of the brush. Come in here. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, we're gonna add that step. Alright, for our cloaked, we're gonna use black and brown, so doing that warm cloak. Got everything blacked in that had any of the lighter color already on it. So I'll take a little bit of this black and brown. Just warm it up a little bit. We're not going for like a brown coat. We're going for a black coat that is just in that warm range. So you can see I'm not blowing it out or anything. I'm just kind of warming up that dark color. Very thin in the airbrush, probably 2-to-1 thinner to paint. That way if we overspray, it's not really going to hurt anything. It's not going to matter all that much. And we'll go in and we'll punch some of this toning with our brush. Just to add a little bit more dimensionality to the coat. Alright, to accentuate our warm black coat, we are adding black and brown with the brush, mostly edge highlights and just really small accentuating highlights. So going in, just putting edges, and then from here taking dark flesh, so it is still warm, and mixing it with our black and brown. And this is just for the edges or like really steep folds. So if I have a fold here and here, it's just to show like a little more contour in the coat. There. And then toward the ends of edges here, brighten it up a little bit. Just adding that contrast so you can actually see what's going on with the shapes of the coat here. So we're going to finish that up, do that on everything coat wise, and then the cuffs we'll look at. Thinking about doing maybe like a fur or like a padded interior cuff. Alright, we've done a base coat of the belt in field drab. So again, changing up our browns. And then we're going to do a contrast of the Gorgunta fur over that. A little more on the red-brown side. Just put it on there. We'll let it dry, and then we'll take the field drab and highlight back up. Alright, we've got our leather belt here highlighted up. Went one step further with a little bit of the flesh tone mixed in, so I took a little bit of that dark flesh, mixed it in with our base color here, just to give a little bit of extra highlight right here on the back of the coat. We're going to go ahead and finish out his little skull mask, working up to our dead flesh. So that is our bloodless skin, so it's the Reaper bloodless skin. We're going to take it up from our khaki brown mixture. Kind of, you know, bloodless has got like a little bit of a bluish tone in it. So getting some of that color highlight in there. And making sure we're going to accentuate these shapes, because face is one of those things that people key in on when they're working. I'm going to adjust my light just a little bit. I'm casting a lot of shadows. Yeah, there we go. I'll tilt this one up too. More light the better, right? Just get some more of that khaki. Just hitting some teeth. Accentuating these shapes. Making sure that like little divot in the cheek is represented well. I'll mix some of that bloodless skin in just to see where that puts us. In a value sense. The good cool brightness coming in. And I'm going to finish this out all the way up to the bloodless skin highlight. Make sure I get the other sides there. And then these little tabs that were on his coat, we did in the same way that we did the belt. So sorry, I forgot to mention that. And then I think we need to start working on some of the cordage and just get a base color on that, like all these little wraps and ropes that are sitting on there. We're going to do kind of a yellowy, standard rope for those. All right, base color for our ropes are going to be the Beastie Brown and Pale Yellow mixture. And just so you can see the work on the little skull mask there, that's blending from that dark black, brown, chocolate brown, khaki, and then the bloodless skin. I always want to say like dead flesh. Dead flesh is this one here. And a different brand of paint. So you can see highlighting like the tops of the teeth, and then the sockets where the teeth are, and then some volumetrics here on the cheek there, and his eye starting to come out with that brightness in front of it. You got that kind of like milky energy voodoo eye going. So the Beastie here, we're going to stay primarily Beastie with our base coat and then bring it up with highlights. We're going to brighten it up just a little bit to get that base kind of twine hippie color. You could also do this pale yellow and then do a wash of sepia to get around the same tone. We're just going to go in and base these colors out for all these little wraps that are going on in this guy. Alright, so now I decided to go back and add some of Gargax, can't say these words, to our initial base coat. So darken it down a little bit, add a little bit of separation, object separation, and I'll come back with the same base tone and use that as our first highlight. So pretty common to use a contrast over a base color and then use that color as the first highlight if you want smooth transitions for things. So coming in here, and I kind of want to start mimicking the pattern. I'm not going like full tilt on getting all these lines like perfect yet, but I will. And we're going to take it all the way up to this yellow, which is the pale yellow. I should mention that. I should tell you what colors I'm using, because I'm a good teacher. Alright, ropes are finished up. You can see we went all the way up to that pale yellow, giving some nice definition and highlights to all of those, and a pretty good color difference. I'm going to work on the little runestones next. I'm trying to pick things that are harder to get to, so that if I accidentally get some paint or some like green or whatever color like the gray that we're going to do on something else like the bones, that it's easy to just cover up and it's higher up, so I'm not trying to push my brush past that object. So thinking about like order of operations is always important, especially on high level models when you spend a lot of time on something, and then you hit something and you don't see it, and then you don't have a chance to like wipe it off or wet your brush and try to get it off of there before it dries. You come back and you're looking at your model and you're like, oh, awesome, I get to repaint all that. And all your colors are dry and put up and you thought you were done. So we're going to start with a darker gray here and do kind of a stone-like texture on all these runes. He's got some up in his hat as well. And he's got some playing cards up there, which we'll have some fun with later on. Alright, for the runes, we went with Bastion Gray. Nice kind of greeny mid-tone gray. You can see it in here. So going along with the skin, he has some runes tucked up right above his ears. I guess that's where the ears are. One in his hat. Few on the back side too. So be aware, they're everywhere. He's got a lot of magic. Base coat, we're going to just start adding white. Keep it kind of neutral with that greeny gray. I'll come back and film a little bit of that for you. Alright, time to highlight those stones up. So here you can see that our Bastion Gray highlights up real nice. It's got that kind of subtle green tone going on with it. Here we go, kind of doing a texture with it. So adding a little dots here. It's a piece of rock. So we got 1, 2, 3 steps up. Third step up, very light in texture. So let me get crouched down here. Maybe one day I'll have a cool camera. Do this so I can like paint down like over here or something. You guys can see it. And then it'll get dusty and break because we're airbrushing in here constantly. There's like 8 of us. And then moving up one more time and just layering in those highlights. Right, we're going like down into the to the left. Slide to the left. Yeah, like a little pop right there. Go ahead and make sure we're getting our edge highlight all the way around. And then final highlight. Get that edge just a little bit right there. Finish it up. Giving that some interest, right? And I gotta figure out what color we're gonna do for these little rune stones. Maybe go with the red, but I am gonna ask my art director about that. See what he wants to do, because I don't want to have to change it all if I do it in a color that is not lore specific. Alright, we got all our rune stones done. Went in and base coated all the bone with our whichever color it was. I think it was Field Drab, this one here. And then taking some of the New Vallejo contrast, just experimenting, taking the dwarf skin, reducing it with some of the cuttlefish medium here in our dry palette, and looking at the colors that we get. We want to make the bones like a little bit different here and there, so coming in heavy load on a bigger brush and just getting a nice good shadow tone on there. And we'll come back. Now if we come back and do another layer, we can differentiate things, make shadows deeper, make the color and tone a little bit different between objects, just to add a little bit more interest instead of having like all the bones be completely the same. Different skull, bird skull, human skulls, we got bones and claws and stuff. So we're gonna change that up a little bit. I got 2 other colors here I'm gonna play with. We have the Wasteland Brown and the Copper Brown. So we're gonna go back and forth, add some of those to all this in here with the little femurs and things he's got hanging on him. Alright, let's paint up some skulls and some bones, claws, those things. So here we've got the first skull, which is done in a pretty monochromatic, non-chromatic version. We've washed, that. It's been a day for me. Did all our washes. Those are dry. Not washes, express colors. So now we're going to take an array of colors and use those to just create like a little bit of differences in the bone. So bone-like colors here, bloodless gland, dead flesh, sand yellow, khaki, field drab, and then dark flesh and white. So using a mixture of all those colors just to give a little bit of difference to each part. And then I've got one claw here highlighted, so you can and then like a little dot at the top. I'm going to add those to the palette real quick and kind of show you an example of what I'm talking about. Alright, so here you can see all the colors arranged in a fairly OCD way. I didn't go in value order, if that convinces you that I'm a normal person. So taking some of this field drab here, since all of our base colors are in the field drab, we can use that field drab to bring up. And then let's look at something that you guys can see and that I can see at the same time. Just taking this little classic bone shape here, starting to re-highlight areas. So really subtle step up, and then take this field drab. Let's add a little bit of this yellow. So we want to take our base color and add value increasing colors to it. So we have like a green, a red, or a yellow, a red, a green type bring up. So we have like, primary-ish colors except for the green, but still in that segment, still in the bone. We really wouldn't use a blue, even though I'm going to add some filters that have blue. Again, highlighting up, painting under the camera. I need to get a camera I can get my face, or have it aim to where I can get close to something, so I can actually show you guys how I blend a little bit more, because I always go back and kind of blend these a little bit more. Add a little bit more of that yellow, bringing our value up. Add to those areas that are kind of in the light. And then let's change it up just a little bit. I mean, realistically, you could probably stop there, blend it out, and be done. There we go. Highlighting up those bones, making them look more bony. So just have fun with it. This is one of those times where you can take colors and just go nuts. These are all in the same range. You're not going to mess anything up. Just go from dark value to light value and mix and play with these different tones and have a good time. Alright, got all our bones painted, even the skull, up by the glaive here. You can see different variations of mixtures of paints leading up into value. So here there's 3 or 4 different trails from combinations of colors brought in, and even here working from dark back into a light that was here. Same in a lot of these regions. This is generally how I mix when I'm layering. And then you can see, let's use a sharp brush, variations in tone. So like these 3 skulls here, really good example. You got kind of a neutral red, yellow here, and then the teeth here, you can see these greeny yellows followed by neutral and warm tones here and there. And then also adding the lining to the claws, because it's just kind of a neat way to add a little bit more definition to an otherwise fairly benign, smooth object. So let's address the elephant in the room, which are all these feathers. And he's even got feathers beside his hat. So what we're going to do is a little bit of a modified slap chop. Maybe it is slap chop, I don't know. Who the hell knows what that term means anymore. So I'm going to start a little bit darker and start working things up. Get a volumetric brush on there. This is one of those areas on a model that is just chock full of texture. And yes, I am using a Winsor Newton Series 7 size 4 that has seen much better days in the past. Now, I'm sure if you're watching my videos, you're probably familiar with the slap chop technique as far as layering up colors in a dry brush fashion and then adding contrasts, express color, speed paints, whatever name has been designated for the brand of what it does. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do a very colorful headdress for this guy. And I'm going to layer this up, adding layers of white until we get to full white, and focus a highlight in one area so that those colors are brighter, higher in value, a little more vivid. So I have my grayscale applied now for the feathers on him. So we got feathers on the staff, his neck frill there, and then 2 feathers in the cap. Gonna start bright. Gonna start with the yellow and work our way down. Yellow, orange, red, green, teal, purple, blue. So go run the gambit of colors. So I'm gonna go in and kind of make sure that everything's distributed, randomized in a way. Ugh, ooh. Man, only complaint about these bottles is they're really easy to squeeze while you're opening them. Whew. Almost needed a new shirt. Grabbing a fairly large brush. Get a brush load, get there, tickle the paint a little bit. Get our primary color locked in. Of course, we're going to be going back and highlighting all of these. Joy. Alright, we're a little more Fruit Loopy now as far as colors go. So each one of these colors we're going to go in 2-step highlight it up. So for the blue, we're going to go in with Electric Blue and Verdigris from Game Color, and just go in, pull streaks, add some dot highlights here and there, randomize it some. Feathers are rarely perfect, so we want to be a little bit random with our brush strokes. So I will give an example on this feather. I'm going to go back and spend the next year painting feathers. And you see the Electric Blue is tonally about the same as the express color over our white. And so what we're doing is we're smoothing that out. We're giving it some consistency, removing that fuzzy-ish look from the dry brush. And we'll continue to do that and build those up, moving up. You can do a mix of these if you want. For my time, I'm gonna do the 2-step because feathers are pretty intense. See there, now we got a way more defined edge on that one side, and add some value, interest to it. Alright, got all of our feathers highlighted up in our 2-step highlight, and here are all the color combinations that have been used. You can see yellow line, orange line, red line, so we used the same highlight for orange and red, which is a flesh tone, warlord and a pink for the purple, turquoise, and then turquoise mixed with some of the verdigris that we did for the blue, a lime green, and a yellow here for the green. I think that's it. You got a comment section. Let me know if you got questions about this part. From here, we're getting close to that home stretch finish. Feels good. Gonna go ahead and just lay in some base coats on the rest of our parts, and work from there. Trying to get to that home stretch. Adepticon's coming. Alright, looks like we got the rest of our base elements shored up. I went ahead and did the top hat in the same colors as the cloak. So that's the same steps with the edge highlights, a little bit of fading on the hat itself. We have a base of our, it's a mix of the chocolate brown and the drab brown, field drab, for the cuffs of the coat. And then for the wraps, we have khaki and a little bit of a deep purple. You can use just about any purple because you don't use a lot of it, just enough to give it like a little bit of a tinge. Same for the wraps on the feet. We're about to hit that with a contrast of the snakebite, using every brand of paint that we can find. The little bottom cloak, same as the hat and the coat. Decided to keep it that kind of dark leathery brown. The shaft of the glaive here is beastie brown. Beastie. The top of the glaive is a mix of black and khaki. So that's our base. We're going to go for like a sharpened bone sword glaive, because that's what it looks like most of the weapons in the artwork are from. And then down here we got this dark gray for the beginnings of a very rusty bottom haft. Still need to address these two little areas in the back, and will do so. Playing cards just base coated with a base white, and I think that's it. Let's go ahead and put some snakebite leather. Give it a good old shake-a-rooney. Stay open. See, all I gotta do is tell it to stay open, and it'll stay open. I'll roll up my sleeves. Always wet your brushes before you stick them in the paint. It will make them last longer. Then we're just going to slab this on. So we'll see that the coolness come out a little bit through the snakebite. And that's what it's there for. And then we'll highlight it back up. Once this is dry, we're going to hit this area and the area on the glaive. Alright, so once your snakebite is dry, we're going to highlight these areas back up, the wraps. For that, we add a little bit of our purple, some of our chocolate brown, and some khaki. We're using that purple and the chocolate brown to bring down the value of our khaki, and we're going to work all the way back up to a pure khaki. And just following topography with these highlights, and keeping in mind like a left side light source with this, but fairly subtle. We're not going extreme with highlights, so this is still shadow area color. And keeping objects separate as we're going up. So we're going to layer this all the way up to our khaki, leaving just the darkest shadows right now, and making sure we got some interest in the way the straps are wrapping around the object here. Now I'm going to get back in here as well when I can reach it. Well, let's go all the way up. So I'm taking some of this khaki here, mixing it into our base color, and you can kind of see the progression there if the glare isn't too bright. Let's just work on this top strap for a second. So going inside our color in two ways. Inside the previous highlight, so going inside vertically and then inside horizontally. So starting in a different spot and then moving it up and starting leaving a little bit of that other color so that our colors flow together. Alright, take a little bit of this, mix it in here, so going around this again, keeping our highlights toward the left here, so they're getting brighter on that side. You can see this foot have that darkness on the inside there, and that brightness kind of riding up in the same highlight region as the front of that leg. And this one, it's dark. You got some light in here, dark here, main light source here because the coat's blocking you on the other side. This is pretty much 4-step layer. Almost a spot highlight at this point. Real thin lines. Just making sure that our brightness is in the right spot. And that's it. We're going to do that on these straps as well. Keeping about the same light scheme, so about in here is where our highlight's going to fall for this, even though it's kind of on the back side. We'll do a mirrored highlight on the back side just so we have some interest when we look back on this side of the model. Alright, we've pushed ahead a little bit. I have the bandana here highlighted up, which is just a simple mahogany fade to red. Red being the red from, I think it's just red. It's worn off. But you can use any red for that. Of course, you can do that with any other color too if you want the strap along the hat to be a different color. Going back to what we did highlight wise here and here, feet straps, and then the straps wrapped around the pole. Again, kind of having some continuity here color wise. Of course, the model's got so many colors going on that the amount of neutrals is kind of balancing out what's going on with the rest of the colors in the figure. From here, also point out that we have an ace and a king, and then another ace back here in his hat. Just a little quick call out to these little playing cards here. Okay, from here, the cuffs, which we did in a chocolate brown and mixture of the drab as a base coat. So this was our base coat over here. We're going to use that. We're going to create like a little bit of texture on the cuffs here. So we're going to highlight up in a kind of a dot pattern. This is still the same color as the base coat, so we're not seeing much of a difference, of course, but just kind of showing you the motion. When I stipple, I like to just kind of poke, real tiny little brush strokes. I'm going to do up one side and do like a little bit of an example for you. They're kind of hard to get to spots, because I could do this side over here. Then again, it's not really highlighted in that area. Let's take some khaki. Mix up here, and then start creating our texture. So dots of different sizes and patterns. Let's give them that, bomber jacket look. And you don't have to be perfect, because we're going to do so many layers that texture is just going to carry over. When I say so many, it's not going to be like a whole lot. But there's the beginning, and then we'll just progressively add more khaki and probably add a little bit of white to this. Get a little bit of value increase in this area. just continue on with that until we get to that white, that brighter white. So we have the furry looking cuffs there. Alright, got the dot work done on our sleeves here. So he's got that nice comfy coat. You can feel how warm it is just by looking at it. Which probably isn't that great for living in a swamp. But let's look at doing the haft here with our Beastie Brown. In the home stretch, we got the haft, the blade. I went ahead and threw a khaki and a skeleton horde wash here and here. Skeleton horde contrast. We're going to highlight that back up just with some khaki. But before that, get out a little bit more Beastie Brown. Alright, so paint stop up all the time. These little pins are really useful if you didn't know. Work pretty good. It's getting cold. Oh my god. It's getting cold here as I waste like 50 cents worth of paint. Oh well. Let's look at what we want to highlight with. So, yellowy brown for our wood. And we'll probably add a little bit of teal to it. We're going to do a little bit of teal, like underlighting. Aqua. So we want to use this highlight, which, let's see. Man, where's the glare coming from? It's like back here. It's the overhead light. Let's see. Yeah, it's that one. Alright, there we go. You can see that color a little bit better. So just Beastie Brown with a little bit of yellow in it. And then, now that I move my light, can't see anything. God, just having firing on all cylinders. I've been teaching my son how to do a science fair project for the end of the year. Shout out to all my dads out there who understand the struggle. So we're going to layer this up, add some of that wood grain. Yeah, the glare's back. Woo! Not a huge fan of this, the white palette stuff from Gamer's Grass. I'm going to go back to the kind of semi-transparent stuff. You know, they say it's like washable, but the paint dries faster on it. And, hashtag not sponsored. So, that's my honest opinion on that. As I paint something completely out of focus while commenting on it. So we'll go up to about that. Maybe add a little bit more value, but I definitely want to illustrate that there is wood grain going on in there and that it will be visible. Alright, the blade. So going with that mix of black and khaki, which starts about here and moves all the way to khaki, and then khaki mixed with white, and then all the way to white, just to give a very polished bone look. Nice, sharp, dangerous. Highlight here at the bottom and at the top of the blade. Not going to put any kind of streaks or anything through there. I am going to add like a little bit of flesh tone through the airbrush, just to show a little bit of age, a little bit of that, you know, kind of stained look of use. Haven't painted this side yet, but going to, as far as choices on where to put highlights, more about maintaining interest, so keeping this dark edge at the back real bright at the front, edge highlight all the way around, but then dropping our highlight across this surface toward the eyeball of the skull here, and then sort of the same in this situation where we have our highlight here up toward the mouth of the skull, and then here where we get progressively brighter as it runs down the blade. I'm going to do something similar, I guess in here too, because we need to get this the hook of the glaive there, and then, you know, do a little bit of diametrically opposed faces just to add interest to the object. Again, just layering, just this darker gray khaki to white. Nothing super crazy when it comes to blending. You can see my layers in there. No big deal. Alright, we got the back side of the blade done and the underside in here as well. I think it looks pretty spiffy. We did some edge highlights here on the inside of this pattern. So things to finish up. Oh, put some earth on the base, and then we're going to do some non-metallics here with a little bit of weathering. It's not very visible, so we're not going to spend like a huge amount of time on that. And then we need to drop in little magic glowy runes. I think I'm going to do that after I do some of the airbrush filters, just so that the filter doesn't affect that or get into it, which would look awkward. So now taking a little bit of black, a little bit of white. We already have kind of like a base gray going. Need more white. Hopefully not squeeze paint all over my palette like I did last time. We got a big old pool. Let's grab all this contrast blue here. Express blue, sorry. It's hook and loop. And just do some volumetric shades down in here, and we'll highlight these all the way up to kind of a yellowy white, and then hit them with some orange, keeping it a little bit rough because this is, you know, it's a Gator man. He's been using that weapon a good bit, getting rusty, dragging it through the swamps. So we got a, you know, kind of a basic volumetric cylinder with spikes that's really hard to get to. So rinse, add white, repeat on the inside. Don't forget your edge highlights, kids. And remember to layer your edge highlights as well. I think that's about as far up as that actually needs to go. Then we'll take some of this. I got some active here. The chimeras rehydrate really well. You can see that. Rehydrating. Look at how thick that color is. Alright, then we're gonna water it down. Good bit. Wipe out our brush. Get some of that. Let's rust him up a little bit. Since it's pretty thin, it'll dry. A little bit darker than the way it's applying. Just to give him a little bit of interest. You put some on the top here. So, a little bit of rust in there. I'm looking. I think that's it. I did go ahead and add, like, I did black on the buttons with a little bit of a light gray highlight just for like a little pop of a button. I think the only other thing I didn't go over were these little bars in here. The little bars for fasteners. I made those kind of a mahogany. Added a little bit of tan to that for a two-step highlight. And then I think that's it. We're going to hit this base with a Gargrax. Not Gargantifer. If I can find it. Gargax. Sewer. should be dry. So we're going to take one of our older brushes and just slather that in there, adding some water, thin it down, let it flow into those recesses, and then we'll end up dry brushing this back up once it is dry, because I want to dry brush it before I filter it out. Alright, so we got our skin wash thinned down about 50-50 in our airbrush, and we're going to use that on our blade here, maybe a few other areas, but I just want a little bit of tint. See that? Just a tiny bit of red tone added in there. Practice being able to do that is taking, if you watch my finger here, little tiny agitations, and I can hit where I want. It kind of stipples the color in there, and so now you can see the difference between that edge and that edge. See, we're a little monotone, and we've made it richer. And if you mess up, you get to repaint a whole bunch of stuff. So don't do that. Hit this back edge. Cool. Got a little bit of tone on the skull, which I'm fine with. I want to hit the bottom of these those right there. Right there, the cuffs, hitting the bottom of those. Maybe a little bit in the shadows of the leg guards. Again, this is just to add some punch, Hawaiian punch. In those areas. Just a little bit on the tail for some interest in the shadows. Be sure to watch your back spray, and when your airbrush kind of stops spraying, go ahead and take it, put it to the side, pull the trigger all the way back, make sure that you're not getting hurt because you're getting like a dry tip or a little bit of a clog started, even with your inks. I think a little bit up in the feathers, just to naturalize them back in here. Get tiny little adjustments. I got a little bit on that stone. This is fine. A little bit right there in the neck. Come around here. Just for some shadow naturalization, like back in there, just a few little hits of that color. Now we're going to switch out and get some yellow. Alright, we're going to dry brush the base before applying any more of our filters. Just taking some of that earth. So that was our base coat. Going down, going back up. Got our dry brush here. Do like a little bit of tests. Make sure coming off the brush like we want. And then commit. Whoop. I always hit my camera when I'm dry brushing. Anyway, it's a dry brush. Load your brush. Make sure you don't overload it. And then it's all about multiple brush strokes. We're going to go brighter at the front, so I'll add a little bit of yellow to this. I think I need to add my tufts too before I do any of that ambient sort of lighting. I'm just kind of scrubbing here. multiple coats. Alright, I got these tiny little tufts. They're Gamer's Grass tufts. Really awesome. I think they're like 2mm. Really good for putting tufts on bases where you don't want to obscure the model, like you do when you do box art for people. Got a pair of tweezers. You do want to glue these down. That tackiness is there for the static grass not to adhere it to the model. It will fall off even though it sticks when you push real hard. So take some super glue, glue that down. While that's drying, time to add a little bit of our teal filter. Alright, we have a heavily thinned FW yellow ink. This is the Indian yellow, just for some brightness in a few spots, mainly on the coat. I want to affect some of these areas and give just a tinge. Inks are a really good spot to start airbrushing because they'll give you that filter control. You can see a little bit of that. Can't see. A little bit of that skull's getting some yellow on it. Heighten the yellows a little bit on the feathers, which will dull some of the other colors, which is okay. And then just a tiny bit from the side, hit some of the rest of these skulls. A little bit in there. Some on the handle and the wood. On the wraps for sure. Again, this is just acting like a filter, so you can see here where it kind of warmed up everything. Definitely on the tail. You see, really, the yellow interacts with the green really well. It makes it much more rich. So I can hit this one side, and then we have that kind of transition happening between like warm light, and then we'll have some cool light. Having fun, shooting inks, all is grand. I think that's it where I want to stop there. Alright, last filter, green India ink, Dr. Phil's. It's very teal. It's leaning in the green side, of course, but has a nice teal accent to it. Again, super sparing, not going crazy. I know I want to hit this side a little bit. You can see it kind of popping up there on the staff. I can. Make your shadows a little bit more interesting, adding little pops of color. Getting the bottom of the skull here, which I like. Get a phone call. And then same thing we did with the yellow. Hit some of the coat here, just in a few areas. And then little tiny cross here. To add that little bit of illuminated glow, that magical swamp glow. We're trying not to bring everything too together. But definitely playing with the shadow a bit. Your teals will pop up really hard, but everything else kind of fades in, which is cool. Good. So now, like, these little objects have a little bit of that blue on them. That's where I want it. Alright, gone in and added some of the Gargax sewer to the bottom of these tufts. I'm going to hit it with like a really quick light pale yellow dry brush. Kind of a wet dry brush here so that it catches those areas. Just to brighten up the tips of the grass a little bit. Paint your tufts. That's my song. Paint your tufts. And then took some Chimera yellow. So these guys got that red magic. Put it inside the little indentions in the grooves here, and we're going to take I don't really want to use a contrast. I just want to use like a watered down red. So take this red here. I'll water it down, and then hit one side of it. Let the paint do its work. Let it sort of pool and move and play in that area, and then you can just kind of wipe it out. Let it mix into that orangey yellow red glow. Alright, this is the end. This is the paint the base ring and beg for likes, subscriptions, comments, questions. I guess I don't have to beg for questions. If you got questions, ask the questions. Paint the ring here. Hope you enjoyed watching the video. A lot of stuff going on with this figure. A lot of stuff going on this week. Adepticon coming up 1 week away. Don't think this video is going to be out before then. I know that they've shown this model at this point, but still got a little bit of time before release. So I can't say, hey, if you see me at Adepticon, if you saw me at Adepticon and you're watching this now, just know that all that composure you see in my face is it's the duck analogy, right? Cool and calm on the exterior, crazy struggling flurry of swimming legs underneath, trying to keep everything going. Alright, if you enjoyed the video, please do give me some love. I got a little place behind the tail I'm going to need to paint after I shut this off because I can't really see it, get to it. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed it, and as always, happy painting.